Starting a new job is a daunting task, especially where your role is to fix structural issues in a company, along with the associated cultural change. My name is Jules Keeper. I am the new Chief Data Officer at Coco Pharmaceuticals, and this is the first in a series of videos looking back at my first 3 months in the company. Coco Pharmaceuticals is a fast-growing pharmaceutical company with about 600 employees. Over the years, it has been successful at developing new generic cancer treatments and wishes to move towards personalized cancer treatments, believing this will help it compete with the bigger pharmaceutical companies. The company is led by 3 world-class researchers who have repeatedly developed groundbreaking treatments. They formed the company after university and have been collaborating to grow it ever since. What they do not realize is how much this seemingly small shift from generic to personalized medicine is going to completely upend their company. During my interview process, the company founders gave me an overview of their new business strategy and the challenges they see. What struck me was their concern for the culture of the company, particularly since they had made a couple of acquisitions, their first ever, and felt they had made little progress in integrating them into the broader company. They were keen that the spirit of trust and collaboration remained strong, and that any governance introduced was not too bureaucratic or stifling of innovation. This whole situation was extremely interesting to me, so I was excited when I received the appointment and joined the team. Of course, I had some ideas on what to do, but I also needed more information and to establish some allies before I made my move. Like many people starting a new role, I used a 30-60-90-day approach to setting expectations and planning my campaign. I agreed to checkpoint with the board at the end of each phase so they were up to speed with what I was doing and we could course correct if necessary. This is my first version of the plan. Notice it is pretty generic at this stage. I had a lot to discover before I could get to the detail. This is what the first 30 days was all about. Once I had gathered the information I needed, the 60-day and 90-day plans could be fleshed out. So let's go through this in more detail. First things first, I needed to get to know my team, understand their skills, current role, ambitions, and opinions on what should change. These were my primary allies in my new role. Then I needed to do the rounds with key people and teams across the organization. This was the best way to learn about the company's operations, products, services, and workflows, and it was also my starting point for building relationships across the business. I made sure to ask how they use data today, and what they could do if they had more. Finally, I needed to document the evidence I uncovered, and outline my approach to share with the board. Depending on my findings from the first phase, I then planned to build out the data strategy, initiate new data projects to support our strategic business shift, and finally set up a data governance program. The final 30 days focused on setting our team up for long-term success. We needed to build a metrics system to demonstrate the value that my team, and the data governance efforts, are bringing to the business. Then set our long-term goals, and align them with the company's objectives. Finally, we needed to build additional relationships and seek feedback for ongoing development. So what did I learn in my first 30 days? When I met my team, I was surprised that there were only 2 people managing the company's data. Erin Overview had been with the company from the start and knew where everything was, how the company developed, and who the key people were. She was highly respected by the board. Peter Profile had less experience, but under Erin's mentorship he had a good grounding in data architecture, design, and data management. They were both pulled into projects as needed, and spent the rest of their time providing ad hoc data to the board and other leaders. This was a pattern that I was going to see over and over again. The founders were interested in their research, and the products that were derived from it. Everything else was considered overhead and had the minimum investment. My team were pleased at my appointment and the forming of an official Chief Data Office, since they hoped it would provide more focus and investment in Coco's data infrastructure, along with greater recognition for the work that they did. With Erin and Peter's help, I built an agenda of meetings with people in different parts of the company. Faith Broker, head of human resources, was definitely going to be an ally. She not only was responsible for the employees' data, and was keen to make better use of it. She was also an expert on data privacy. Gary Geek led the infrastructure team. He was a technology enthusiast and has a clear view of the systems used by Coco Pharmaceuticals. Many of these systems had been built in-house, and Gary was instrumental in keeping the IT system sprawl to a minimum. Gary was concerned about managing the systems for the new acquisitions. He only had a small team, and they were already stretched just managing the systems they currently owned. Another ally in the making. The finance team explained their experiences with the supplier fraud and how hard it was to investigate the situation with their current data setup. They were also concerned about managing cash flow and other financial controls with the faster cycle times needed by personalized medicine. I could see that I would be working with them going forward. The manufacturing team, led by Stu Faster, were planning a manufacturing digitization project. They were keen for me to look at the data side of their plans to see if there was more value that could be derived from their data. The security team was led by Ivo Padlock. He had many years' experience in physical security, but very little knowledge of cybersecurity, and left that side of things to Gary Geek. He had hired a security consultant, Sydney Seeker, to help the finance team with the fraud investigation. Sydney was urging that they needed to be more proactive in the cybersecurity arena. Finally, the research teams. This was the focus, the darling, of the company, and the place where I had to deliver value, if I was to keep the respect of the board. The research teams were responsible for much of their own data management. Their systems were deliberately isolated from the main business systems to protect the research intellectual property. However, for personalized medicine, they would need some access to the business flow in order to capitalize on the new data that would become available. I noticed that no one from the recent acquisitions was included in my meeting list. That was because neither Aaron nor Peter had any contacts there, so I went back to the founders for information. Meeting the recently acquired teams was interesting. The Austin plant was acquired nearly a year before. They had been relogoed so they looked a part of the company, and they were integrated into Coco Pharmaceuticals' supply chain. However, that was as far as it went. There was no real sharing of experience nor future direction. They had been doing small batch manufacturing for many years, the reason they had been acquired, and felt they should be contributing that knowledge to the other manufacturing sites. The EKG acquisition had just closed, so nothing had happened yet. They were keen to get going but a little nervous about what would happen. I realized they were also a bit isolated, and vowed to introduce them to the key people they needed to be working with, so they could take the initiative rather than waiting for others to connect with them. All the teams were welcoming, friendly and aware that things needed to change. They were focused on doing the best job they could, but were unaware of their isolation or how the silos were affecting their work. Plenty of food for thought. You may have noticed I appear in many of the pictures with a book entitled Open Metadata. This is not actually a real book but symbolic of the fact that I had been following an open source project called Egeria. This project looks to provide open metadata and context management for enterprises engaged in significant transformation. The project puts an equal focus on the three cornerstones of governance: people, process and technology. The aim is always to enhance and integrate what is already in place, and then fill the gaps. It seems an excellent approach and I was intrigued to see if it would work in Coco Pharmaceuticals. As a spoiler, I can let you know now that it has been a huge success. As these videos reveal our journey, I will share details of the different values it brought to our teams pretty much from the day it was installed. You can view the work we have done at egeria.pdr-associates.com. Or load and run it in your own environment with Egeria Workspaces. See egeria-project.org/egeria-workspaces. In the meantime, back to the story. The data strategy I put together was called Better Data for Everyone. I have a philosophy that the data strategy should deliver data to help transform the business to meet its strategic goals. This alignment with business change helps the data team follow the available investment and demonstrate relevance. For Coco Pharmaceuticals, I noticed that the exchange of data between its different parts was pretty minimal, focused on the regularly scheduled processing of orders, manufacturing, and deliveries. For personalized medicine to work as a business, I could see that key people in Coco Pharmaceuticals were going to need accurate real-time data that helps them manage a dynamic and constantly changing business. Data will need to be exchanged between the business units at the speed of the business transactions. Understanding the data we have, and actively managing it is going to be key, so we know what needs to be sent where and when. To this end, I put together a simple framework that identified the key work items necessary to enable this data sharing. Each box represents an enabling capability in the organization, its processes, or its technology, that together delivers a governed data exchange. At the top are people, the data-enabled employees. If the people working at Coco Pharmaceuticals did not value their data and use it in their work, there was little point in developing it. Continuous analytics and AI supplies the data and intelligence needed for decision-making, in real time. Authoritative sources focus on the data that supplies the analytics, and the optimized information supply chains deliver this data to the systems where it needs to be. The data-driven systems architecture focuses on the platforms and services supporting the capabilities above, and the common data definitions maintains our knowledge base. This is where Egeria fits. Finally, what do I mean by multifaceted governance? My discussions with the various leaders across the company showed that they were all looking for more investment, and their needs were interdependent. For example, data management needs secure systems. Secure systems need trusted data to manage them. If we could come together and define a governance program that meets all of our needs, and collectively supports the new business strategy, we are all likely to be successful, rather than continuing in our own silos. When I shared the strategy with the board, they agreed with my analysis, liked many aspects of my plan but worried that it looked expensive, and could take investment away from research. I explained that these data investments would enable faster collaboration between clinicians, our business, and the research teams. We agreed to go to the next level of detail, and would meet again in 30 days. Stay tuned for the next episode to understand how we move towards implementation.